Is it permissible to pray in a mask? Now, this is a situation that we're all facing. Clearly, there seems to be some kind of benefit, whether it's to the person themselves or whether it's to others, of actually being now in public with a mask. And that would also mean whilst praying as well, especially if there are others around you. Is that something which is allowed? Well, there is a hadith, أنها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يغطي الرجل فاه في الصلاة, that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited a man to cover his mouth in the prayer. And there are a number of hadith like this, and in my personal opinion, I consider this hadith and all of the different versions and narrations of this to be weak and not worthy of evidence for such a ruling. However, there are still a number of muhaddithin, scholars of hadith, that did consider it to be acceptable. In the contemporary time, Shaykh al-Albani, for example, held this hadith to be acceptable, al-Hasan. The real interesting point is that the majority of the fuqaha and the madhahib acted upon this hadith, and therefore they considered that it is makruh, it's disliked to cover the face. Now, frankly, whether the hadith is authentic or not, or to be ruled upon or not, what there's no doubt about is that in principle, a person shouldn't be covering their face anyway. I mean, even a woman, when it comes to the covering of the face or the wearing of the burqa or the niqab, this is something only if she goes out. It's not something which is fun, not something which is nice. She's not meant to cover her face when she's praying at home. And neither is a man in principle, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya bani Adam, khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid. O mankind, look as great as you possibly can, as beautiful as you can every time that you are, not just in the masjid, but in the position of prayer, as the scholars did the tafsir of the verse. When you're about to pray, when standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no doubt that the honorable and the respectful position is certainly not covering your face, but to put forward your face, which is your honorable and your most beautiful part, the one that you should be most proud of. So in principle itself is not the right way. And that's, of course, in normal times. And that's a phrase that we're getting used to now, right? The new normal. Because the new normal, due to the health authorities and the situation that we're in and the experts, they are suggesting that in certain situations we do need to cover our faces. That of course is not an absolute advice. There are certain scenarios where that might not be necessary. For example, when you're with your family, or you're isolating together, or there is a lot of space in between people, and so on and so forth. And so I want people to respect the expert and local authority advice where they are in their country, in their city, and if it asks them to do so, then we know that it makes health sense as well. We also know that even for the scholars that consider this to be makruh, and very few consider it to be haram, but most of them consider it to be disliked, makruh. Al-makruhat tubah عند الحاجة. The scholars have a qaida fiqhiyya, a maxim, which basically states that the disliked matters, if there is a need, then they become permissible. Now, as it stands, it's not just a need actually. In fact, it's almost a necessity for us to protect ourselves and other people at this moment. And that's why the experts are telling us to put on these masks. So I think it is permissible because of the need, even whatever we think about the strength of the hadith or not, but it is something which is a good idea. It does give us some kind of protection, and we should embrace that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Subscribe to this channel, share this video, and click on the bell icon so that you can be notified with every new video at Faith IQ. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.